Hi, hello friends and family. This is Cara-Renee from B.Reborn Art and Healing. And today I did a 14 by 14 canvas. This is actually for a dear friend of mine who got married and her husband. And I am using a couple of Shawn Petite stencils as well as a lot of her vintage papers. The papers were specially chosen for my friend, kind of about life and just everyday things like shopping lists and things like that, that our lives are really built around. And then also there was a gel print page that I did. And here I am using my black archival ink and a stencil that says Happily Ever After. And I'm going to be putting that on the center of the canvas when I get to that point. And this technique is just beautiful for being able to add some sentiment. The tissue paper actually blends into the background really well. So it's a great technique. I really enjoy. And again, here I'm showing my 14 by 14 canvas. And I'm going to use some brown paper there in the center and mark it off so that I know how much I can use my other papers around the edges without interfering with that center space. So I do end up covering up all of that, I believe, in the end. And again, that is just how mixed media works. You kind of start out with an idea or an inspiration, and it kind of takes on a life of its own. And so here I'm just centering my paper and measuring to make sure that it's as center as possible. I do end up losing those marks later on down the road here, but it worked out just fine, and nothing looked too terribly off-centered. So I have a lot of challenges keeping my projects balanced, so I do try to measure things out a little bit better. And this is one of Shawn Petite's papers that you can buy in her shop. They're part of a collage pack. And then here again, I'm going to go ahead and mark those corners so that I know how far in I can come in with my other collage papers. I chose this theme for my friend because my husband and I have been married a long time, and so obviously learned a lot along the years about what happily ever after means. And it doesn't always mean that everything is happy, like fairy tales, a boy meets girl, boy kisses girl, and everything else is just a dream. And it's not. It is about shopping lists and everyday kind of mundane things sprinkled in with a lot of joy and sharing and children and making memories and those kinds of things. So the papers here were specially chosen for that reason. They are very, very old papers, again, that are from Shawn Petite's website at shawnpetite.com if you want to check that out. It's amazing collection that she has there. And I'm just kind of going around the edges of my canvas, spreading out different pieces of those papers. And I will also be incorporating bits and pieces of that gel print paper that I showed you that was actually done using Shawn Petite's Mediterranean stencil, which is absolutely one of my favorites. Totally, almost in every project that I do these days, but it's really beautiful and very, it fits with just about any design. And so here I'm just going to continue and move around the canvas, adding various papers. This is a piece of the jelly print paper, which if you are interested in learning how to do jelly printing, I am going to be offering that in my four-class series of art journaling. That is a live class, in-person class here in the Vancouver, Washington area. But I will be demonstrating that, and people will have a chance to play with that and see how it works. It's very addicting if you can go on and on and on with the prints as you overlay different elements on the paper, and it creates just this really fun background that's great for using for art journaling, as well as you can see me using it here for my canvas. With mixed media, a lot of this background will not be visible, but I know it's there, and I know the meaning of the papers. And so my newlyweds will have to watch this video so that they can get the story behind the piece that I created. So it's really fun. And then I also am incorporating some music pages because I know that my friend and her new husband are very musically inclined. And he actually has written songs for her, which are really beautiful. So, and in the end, it's really fascinating that the music notes are what showed up the most through all of the other texture when the piece is finished, which was not intentional. It's just kind of the intuitive way that things go. So I'm going to be adding the music pages around, or the music scraps, around the canvas. I'm leaving that space in the middle open because I don't want too much bulk or too much texture underneath that area where I'm going to be putting the happily ever after with the tissue paper. So that's why that space is going to remain empty. And so as I move through this, I'm just filling in all those white spaces and just creating a border around the center section where the sentiment is going to go. And I don't know, I don't remember off the top of my head the company that made the Happily Ever After stencil, but I will find that out and put it in the description. And here I'm just adding a little bit more of those jelly print papers, which blended really well into the background and into the color, kind of a neutral, deeper color palette here that I've created. I've used some new products here that, well, not new to me, but some new colors of some Prima Marketing Alchemy waxes, which I absolutely adore. But I did pick up some new colors, and so I'm using those here at the latter end of the video here. And here again, just more of those old vintage papers. Some of them are just script writing, and then others are actual lists. They look like they were like, something that a man would have used to order supplies in a hardware store, that kind of thing. But I love the vintage paper because I know that there is a life story behind every one of those. And I just love thinking about what that story might be or what life looked like or felt like for those people. And I don't have a lot of personal history that I can reflect on back on in a positive way. So I really enjoy being able to capture segments of people's lives, everyday lives in my work. So, and there again, some more of the music paper, struggling to get it sort of straight so it doesn't look too wonky, which really doesn't matter when you're creating a collaged background, because again, most of that doesn't really show up in the final piece. You have to look pretty closely. And here I'm just kind of evaluating that center section again. Looks like I need to put some more paper around the edges. So you'll be seeing me doing that here in a few minutes. So here I'm going to go ahead and apply that paper, and then I come back and fill in those white spaces again with some other bits of paper. Again, this page was beautiful. I loved the vintage look of it, but it ended up being just kind of as I moved through the process, I knew that it was going to be too dark by itself to be able to put my words against. So I did bring in some other paper, as you'll see here in a little bit. And all of these papers are being adhered with a liquid matte medium, which is basically just an adhesive, very liquidy. And you will probably also notice that I was putting it on the surface of the canvas as well as on the back of the collage pieces, because I found that it helps the pages not to wrinkle so much, because it's a lot of wet media to put on paper, and that seems to work pretty well. When I print these out, they're on a fairly thin, just kind of a regular copy paper. So it helps them to not be to not bubble up so much. And here I'm coming in with some bits and pieces of those music sheets, because that was really, as I was kind of moving through the piece and thinking about my friends and what I wanted to be saying in this piece, the music pages seemed really important. And when I create art, that tends to be how it goes. I just kind of move through the process, and as I feel my heart speak to me about different things, different elements, different colors, placement, all of those things. And it ends up being a big part of how the story unfolds. So, for my friends, I did also write them a letter, which I put in the wedding card, kind of about my thoughts about happily ever after, and what it means and what it doesn't mean, and my hopes and dreams for them. So they're going to get a little bit of a better idea of how this piece was birthed and what the thoughts were and the heart behind it. So I'm really excited for them to be able to see that and to hopefully watch the video so that they can see how the piece came together. And there again, I was just filling in the last bit of white canvas that was showing. And I found that you don't have to necessarily prime the canvas with gesso if you are applying papers to the entire surface, because the gel medium actually creates a barrier, so that all of the mediums that you use don't absorb into the canvas. So sorry about the little pause there. Looks like I'm needing a little bit more paper. Oh, I know. I thought I wanted to just go ahead and add randomly some of those pieces over atop some of the others. So some of the music notes. Again, that was kind of where my heart was going, was the music. Worship in particular, my friends are big worshipers. So I love that. That will be a part of their world, and it's a very good thing. So just cleaning up there a bit. I don't, not a messy crafter. I don't do well with piles of things around me. So when I have an opportunity, I do kind of clear things out of the way. These clocks are actually also from ShawnPetite.com, from Collage Packs. It's kind of, they're clocks, and they look almost like rusty and like they've been cracked and rusted. And I loved this, these elements for this piece, because, committing to a marriage relationship is a huge deal, and it's a lifetime, or we always hope it's a lifetime commitment. And, it's all about time. It's all about how we spend our time, what the quality is of what we're doing. And as well as many of us who are farther down the road know how fast time passes. And so I like time now. I didn't always appreciate the concepts of time, but I really do now. And I loved how this added to the piece. And they do show up quite a bit in the finished piece, because I made an effort to do that. Again, I really encourage you to check out ShawnPetite.com. Not only her product line, her stencils and things, but the collage packs are very inexpensive, and they have a large variety of different elements that are just really fun to use in mixed media. And I thought I had cut this out. It looks like I've got some drying time going on there. My cord wouldn't stretch far enough for me to dry in the center of my mat. So that's what you see me doing there. I do try to cut out the drying time as much as possible. And this is the piece that I pulled to go ahead and lay over that really dark brown paper, because it was going to be too dark, I felt. I don't know, it might have been okay, but I didn't want to risk it. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere this other piece of scrapbook paper that kind of has a frame to it, which I thought was really pretty. So you're going to see me doing that here. And then I do adhere the tissue paper on top of that. And there I was just kind of distressing the edges of the paper. I did that off camera because it makes quite a mess with all the little paper fibers, and I didn't want that on top of my canvas. So that's what I'm doing there. And again, I thought that much of this was cut out, but I'm already doing the voiceover, so I'm not going to start over. So just bear with me here as I move through this process. It didn't really matter which side was up or down on this canvas because everything's kind of wild all over, not in any particular direction. So I'm adhering that with the matte medium, and I do flip it so that that thicker border is on the bottom. As it turned out, when I applied the Happily Ever After, I had to lay them down in such a way to have the two lines fit, and it ended up actually kind of scrunching it more towards the top than the bottom. But, that is the beauty of mixed media. It's really forgiving, and there is really no wrong way to do it, in my opinion. It almost always turns out good, and what doesn't turn out good, you can just sew over and start again, brand new. So I will actually be doing that to a lot of my pieces that I think need a little bit of a change. So that's really the fun of mixed media. It allows you to be imperfect while creating, and what ends up happening is very personal, and it can't really be replicated, which I really love. It's a self-expressive art, and it's a healing art for me. That's predominantly why I do it. I actually have a difficult time creating art that is not inspired from something in my heart. And when I try to do that, I end up frustrating myself and not being able to really move through the artistic process very well because it's not rooted in my heart. So I've been kind of taking inventory of that and trying to be a little bit more intentional that way. That was the Burnt Umber Light fluid acrylic, and that is glazing medium, which you can mix together and create what is called a glaze, which is an even application of color. But because of the glazing medium, you can actually wipe off parts of it that you don't want. In this application, I actually use a baby wipe to kind of pounce on the surface, which created a really unique texture that I ended up really liking. At first, I was just going to use the Burnt Umber Light on that center section, but I did end up going all around the piece and then coming in with a baby wipe and wiping away that burnt umber from kind of just here and there from places until I was satisfied with the look, which was really nice. I love the fluid acrylics. And here is me kind of coming in and splotching that or wiping that back a little bit and creating a more vintage look on that wider piece of paper. I love the glazing because it's just really, you can wipe it back and leave just a suggestion of that color, which makes things look really antique and old. So I really like that. And here I decided I wanted to pull in some of the green that's in that gel paper that I put down. And it really helped, I think, to neutralize it a little bit too. So that's what I did there. That was Sap Green Hue Fluid Acrylic from Golden. And here I'm applying the Happily for my sentiment. And once you hit that, you put that on your surface and it's got gel medium, it is not going to move. Sometimes you can pick up the whole piece and adjust it. But I've had both things happen. I've been successful and I've been very unsuccessful at that. So this time it worked really well. I didn't really like the tissue paper that was overlapping onto the brown frame. So here I'm taking my finger and kind of gently pulling that away without tearing anything away from the letters. I came pretty close there. So I was working very carefully on that. This side didn't work quite as well, but it ended up being okay, as it usually is when you're done with the piece, often the things that you thought that were really going to be, you were going to like, end up adding to the piece. So you kind of just go with the flow and just accept, what's happening. And it usually turns out really good. So there I'm just applying more of the gel medium on top of that tissue paper. It is very fragile, so you have to be kind of careful. And here is where I needed to kind of get around the long part of that Y. And so that's why the happily is offset from the actual area. And then putting my ever after there. It did wrinkle a little bit there in the center, and this is one of the times I was successful at lifting it up and kind of moving it over a little bit to get rid of that fold. So, and here just more gel medium on the top, and it turned out so good. I love it. Such a joy to create. And the tissue paper, the archival ink is just so incredibly easy to use with a stencil and tissue paper. I love it. And here I apologize for the light change. My husband came home from work, and so I took a break from the taping. And when I turned it back on, apparently the lighting outside had changed significantly. So I do apologize for that. And here I am coming in with, this is the embossing, oh goodness, what is it called? The expanding mousse, Nuvo expanding mousse in gray matter. And I'm going to put that all around in all 4 of those corners. And I'm using, this is the first time I've used the expanding mousse with a stencil. And I really liked it. I'll definitely be trying that some more. So I'm using the shapes here in the corners in a little bit more of a defined way, but I do continue to use the stencil on the sides and the top and bottom as well, as you can see here, just to create some texture. I was sorry that here in a couple minutes, you're going to see me adding some more of the texture of the expanding mousse to that frame part. And I kind of wish I hadn't done that, but it worked out okay. And here I'm drying the expanding mousse. I wish that you could see what it looks like as it's drying with the heat tool, because it kind of bubbles up and it hardens, and it's just beautiful. I will have some photos at the end that will show close-ups of what that looks like when it's dry. The next thing I'm going to do here is come in with some texture sand and overlay that kind of to connect the stenciled Nuvo expanding mousse and the canvas there. So I'm just going to come in roughly and fill in some of those spaces. I'm trying to keep those clocks as visible as possible. And this is the part that I wish I had not done. It turned out really, really beautiful, but I felt like it would have, kind of in retrospect, it would have been better to have left it. But again, it's, you'll learn as you create, and that it's like sometimes there's a really happy accident, and this turned out a lot better than I would have anticipated. So I'm cool with that. And this is the burnt umber light again. And I'm going to come in with that. I believe it's just straight up fluid acrylic. I don't think I did a glaze here because I'm using it to color the background there where I've created that texture. I guess I did do a wash. Sorry about that. I did film this about a week ago, and I'm doing the voiceover now after a really busy week in my life. So I'm coming in. This is a burnt umber wash again, or it might be the yellow oxide, transparent yellow oxide. I'm not sure. I will put that in the description though to confirm, but because it looks way yellow, it's probably the transparent. Yeah, it's the transparent yellow oxide fluid acrylic. So just coming in and filling in those spaces, and it's really cool because it goes into all those crevices of the texture that I've created. So I wiped some of that back, and then I'm also coming in with Paynes Grey. And I know I've used that in just about every project and every video that I've done recently, but including the one coming up here next week that I submitted for Shawn Petite's creative team. I also used the Paynes Grey. It's really pretty because it's dark, but it's vibrant. It's kind of a purplish blue, which I really love. So I was applying that to the top of the canvas and then sprayed some water so that it would kind of drip down. It didn't give me as much color as I wanted, so I am coming in just with my paintbrush and adding some water to help it move around a little bit. I kind of went back and forth with this to get the right or the desired color that I wanted. I do tend to go dark. I have a hard time keeping things light, but that's kind of my style, so it's all good. So I do go back and forth trying to figure out what it is that I want to do. And now I'm coming in with a makeup sponge and the fluid acrylic in Paynes Grey, the same color that I used on those drips, and just randomly kind of applying it here and there. Because the yellow is not dry, it is mixing a little bit and creating a green, which I really, really liked. And so here you can see I've come around different parts of the canvas with that Paynes Grey and kind of let it settle into that texture. And that it was really beautiful. And here again, I think I had another little break there because the lighting has changed. This is, I believe this is a Raw Umber glaze, and coming over the whole piece. Again, I didn't, and you can't see the colors very well there in that, around the sentiment. It's way too light here in the video. It wasn't that light in person, but I am coming in with a glaze of the Raw Umber in various places on the piece, and then again wiping it back from that area where the sentiment is, just pouncing my paper or my baby wipe to create kind of a mottled texture there, and then again wiping some of it away around the edges. It looks a lot better in person. I don't think I got the contrast that I really would have wanted in this piece, but you know, it is what it is, and I'm happy with it. I really am working on contrast. It's a hard concept for me, but I'm learning. And here's that yellow, transparent yellow oxide again. I tried coming in and kind of dripping it, but that didn't really work. So I put it in some of the, just kind of dripped it on. And after I've dried that completely, I'm going to come in with some Prima waxes. And these are some of the new colors that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. The one I chose was the peacock, was the primary color. And I'm just coming in with my finger and putting some of the wax on my finger from the lid, and just letting my finger kind of glide across all those textured pieces. Next, I am coming in with another Prima wax that is the Bronze Age, which is kind of a metallic, well, it's more bronze, I guess. It didn't end up having the effect that I wanted, but I did give it a try. I think that the background was too dark. And here's a close-up of that texture. And I hope that you will check out my other videos and like and subscribe on my channel. I am just getting started in the YouTube world and really enjoying myself. So I'd love it if you could let me know if you like what I'm creating. And I hope you have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.